Хорошо. Уважаемые коллеги, гости.
Dear colleagues, dear guests, I would like to start the session of the Dissertation Council for the defense of the dissertation of Sergey Victorovich Oleynikov, seeking the candidate of sciences degree in political sciences and journalism. And the topic is the evolution of cultural information space of states with postponed foreign policy status. Case study of Transnistria Republic. According to St. Petersburg University Act of dated 19 June 2019, I, Igor Nikolaevich Blokhin, Doctor of Political Sciences, Professor of the Department of Theory of Journalism and Mass Communications of St. Petersburg University, act as the chairman of this dissertation council. I would like to introduce my colleagues, members of the council. Konstantin Arseniyevich Pansarev, Doctor of Political Science at St. Petersburg University, Alexander Alexandrovich Pronin, Doctor of Philological Science, St. Petersburg University, Tatyana Leonidovna Kamenskaya, Doctor of Philological Sciences, Novgorod State University, named after Yaroslav Mudry, Yaroslav the Wise, and Dmitry Leonidovich Strovsky, Doctor of Political Sciences, Ariel University, Israel. Well, I would like to note that in accordance with Federal Law number 127 on science and state policy in scientific and technical sphere, St. Petersburg University received the right to grant academic degrees independently. And an act on the procedure of granting degrees in St. Petersburg University was issued on the 1st of September 2016. According to this act, a session of the Dissertation Council is legitimate if no less than 2/3 of the established membership of the Dissertation Council takes place in it, and we have 5 members. Everybody is present. Therefore, quorum is there. Well, I would like to go through the items of the agenda. First is a short presentation of the chairman of the council about the documentation that he received from the defendant. Second, 5 minutes. Third, a short presentation of the defendant aspiring the degree that covers main points of his research, 15 minutes, questions to the defendant on covering the issues that were in the presentation, not more than 2 minutes. And then statements from members of the Dissertation Council, 10 minutes per speaker with questions, and then their reviews, then a presentation, then a statement from the chairman will turn that the chairman takes with his review, and then questions of defendants and open discussion for those who have registered in the registration journal to speak up from the audience. Then 5 minutes per answers of the defendant to the questions, and then a statement of the scientific advisor, academic advisor of the defendant of no more than 3 minutes, a discussion of 5 minutes before open voting on the resolution. And during this deliberation, the broadcast will be switched off, and then an open voting procedure, counting the votes by the chairman, and then taking the decision on granting or not granting of the sought degree, and then concluding statement by the defendant of not than 2 minutes. Before I Before we start our work, I would like everyone to switch off their mobile telephone. I would like to remind you that a live broadcast is on the website with simultaneous interpretation with English to Russian and Russian to English interpretation accompanying this broadcast. And so this is the first item. I would like to inform you that the dissertation of Sergey Victorovich Oleynikov seeking a degree of candidate of Doctor of Political Sciences Doctor of Political Sciences was received and adopted for defense, and so the Dissertation Council was formed, and the membership you've heard about. The following documentation has been submitted to the Dissertation Council by the defendant. A personal application of the defendant addressed to Kropachev Nikolai Mikhailovich, rector of the university, and then the review of the academic advisor of the defendant by Professor Gavra Dmitry Petrovich, Doctor of Sociological Sciences, Professor, Head of Department of Public Relations and Business, St. Petersburg University, and a list of publications consisting of 20 titles which cover the main issues, the results of the dissertation, including 17 articles were published in refereed journals from the list of the Ministry of Education, St. Petersburg University, and 2 monographs. Then a conclusion on the act on the recommendation of the dissertation for defense, signed by Vice Rector for Research, St. Petersburg University, Sergey Vladimir Shmikoshev. Then a degree certificate of Candidate of Political Sciences, then dissertation, hard and soft copy in English and Russian. And I would like to give the floor to the defendant. Under 15 minutes, please, not more than 15 minutes. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear chairman, I would like to present to you a dissertation on seeking the degree of Doctor of Sciences in the degree field 100110 journalism. I would like to show a short overview of the Republic. The relevance of the study is to study the dynamics of the cultural and civilizational development of the modern world, its complex structure and hierarchy of relations in which the cultural information space determines the vector and degree of tension of the socio-political system of a state. We also see the relevance in the fact that ignoring socio-cultural diversity can cause political and more broadly political conflicts. Assessing the degree of the development, the study of the topic, we note that humanities, regardless of their specific areas, still prefer a separate discussion of problems related to the development of culture and information without paying due attention to the multiply enhanced effect of the integration of these two modern phenomena, synergy of them. This information space is being studied as one of the resources of economic development in a consumer society in the context of the influence of its technological nature and the dynamics of the social process. The information space is also considered in the context of the struggle of political groups for control over information, and is a reason for the social and cultural identification of the issue. As for the methodology of the dissertation research, in addition to the methods indicated on the slide, we used empirical analysis methods, observations, analysis of statistical data, content analysis of materials from traditional and online media, regulatory documents, analysis of the results of independent sociological studies, as well as of expert surveys. And this slide covers the empirical base of the study. We see that this is the constitution of Transnistria Republic. This is the combination of legislative acts. This is the white copy and of the Republic, and these are online resources that we used that are open to the public, and we can talk about the openness of the legal base, the legislative base of Pridnestrovie. This is the empirical base of the research. This is the statistics. We have state statistics service, and this data is an open access. And this empirical, again, materials of print and online mass media, archives of paleographical outlets of Pridnestrovie, and then state television and commercial TV, and also data of sociological surveys that I conducted in rural and urban areas of Pridnestrovie. Well, about the statistic, the number of respondents up to over 1,000 with a very good margin of error margin. The object of and the purpose of the study. The first one is the object of research is the cultural information space of contemporary state entities. The object of research is the matrix of cultural information space of states with postponed foreign relations status, and also the role of media component and the functions of media of the states with postponed status, and theoretical relevance of the research. As far as the structure is on the slide, and then practical the evidence and the structure. We have over 600 sources. 399 pages is the total number of pages of the work. The structure of the work, chapter 1 is states with postponed external political status, nature, characteristics, political and legal regulation. Then we also look at the theoretical issues of positioning of states and the problems of their integration in international information space. As part of the first chapter, we use we look at the right of secession that is enjoyed internationally by all states. So since the concept, the connotation of secession and also the integrity, the right of integrity of states, so the priority of the evolution of the states over the regional right to of secession. Well, this conflict is in the political science and axiology are very important. The self-determination. The crisis, as a result, the mobilization of mass consciousness in states with a deferred foreign policy status, the functional principle of organization dominates because the whole policy any policy should consolidate society and prevent the state from being subdued by enemy states. Well, this is in theory, but unfortunately, the information is open, but unfortunately, the information cannot go outside because of the lack of resources and stuff like that. So, on the one hand, there's a temporal increase of contextual content hegemony, and then consolidation of media in syndicated hands. In second chapter, the status of the state influences the media system in this country. So the society is consolidated and also is prepared to receive messages from both states and protest oppositional media. The third chapter talks about the cultural information space of Transnistria Republic from diachronous chronic approach to synchronic approach. This is about the history of the statehood in this republic, and then the reflection of media model on the state's development and the cultural information space. And then I talk about the problem of sustainability of cultural information space of Transnistria Republic, and then also I discuss elite dimension of cultural information space of Transnistria. So the relationship. The chapter also talks about the institutional factors between the elite respondents and non-elite respondents. This is the matrix of the state of cultural information space. You see that the red. The red means that that's where there's a conflict between the understanding from the elite that the elite holds and the ordinary people hold. The green one is where they agree, and then the yellow is where they come together. When we analyze the state media and the oppositional media in Transnistria, we compare it in chapter 4 with international media situation, and we note that the Russian language segment is growing. And also there's a lack of the use of English language resources. There's a lack of knowledge about Transnistria Republic in the world because because there's no broadcasting in English, and therefore there's a stereotypical view of Pridnestrovie Republic as a war area, and so therefore about 50% of foreign respondents associate these regions with military operations, and the aggregate indicator of negative associations reaches 80%. The theoretical and practical significance of the study in the condensed form is presented on the next slide. The structure of the work is determined by the task on the logic of the study that consists of the introduction, 4 chapters. And and as I said, testing topics. The most important in the theoretical is the conceptualization and actualization of cultural information space. This phenomenon implies is a complex of values, traditions, elements of cultural heritage that reproduce mentality and the identity of a particular nation. The relevance of this work and originality is that we noted that Pridnestrovie Republic has a special type of composition, because it's a polyethnic society, and therefore it reflects. It's reflected in the media system and in the foreign policy of the state. As far as the publications, this slide shows the main research articles that first of all it's the discussion of these issues took place at the Department of Journalism of the Philological Faculty of Pridnestrovie State University, named after Shevchenko, and the Department of Public Relations and Business of the Graduate School of Journalism and Mass Communication of St. Petersburg State University. Next item on the agenda. Do we have any questions for the defendant? Dmitry Leonidovich, please. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, Sergey Victorovich, I would like to ask you, this is my question that I included in my review, but I would like to develop it. As far as I understand, one of the main issues is forming trust, developing trust in the Republic. Internally, for example, on this slide, 8% is the and even more importantly is developing trust from the outside. In your dissertation, there are two very important statements. I will formulate them and then formulate my question. So, well, we should look at we should look at Abkhazia and other non-recognized states to compare it with. And maybe we should, and the second one is we should increase English broadcasting to talk, to speak the same language with Europe and so. And I have, when Nicholas I, Russian emperor, was asked, why are the reforms stalled, you know? Well, because nobody can do it. Well, and my question is, so then I was very interested in your paper, but how can we do this, what you suggest, how can you accumulate this experience of Transnistria Republic or other republics to be used in Transnistria case, because those republics don't enjoy much trust. Well, Transnistria Republic has kept pro-Russian vector development over the years, and therefore the media worked hand in hand, has always worked hand in hand with Russian media, and therefore the media space in Transnistria Republic and is integrated into the Russian media state. Well, unlike Ukrainian or Moldovan media, and so therefore and this should have helped the Transnistria Republic because of this fidelity, loyalty with the Russian government and the Russian society, but unfortunately it hasn't helped. But more so, it's actually playing against us in the West, because most Europeans think that this pro-Russian so in this case plays against the Transnistria Republic in the wider context, and it doesn't move Russia to recognize them as well. So what is the solution? So what should we do if no side helps? I noted that states and public institutions should be separate, because public institutions should attract attention and be very open and transparent. State institutions should be transparent and should be directed outward, whereas civil society or public associations should keep the traditional pro-Russian vector of development. And all government institutions will adapt soon to a bilingual environment. And so who's going to promote English broadcasting? Well, since 2018, an investment agency has been set up, was set up to promote the brand of Transnistria Republic, to improve the investment climate, and hopefully it will improve the image of the Republic abroad. Thank you very much. Any questions? Alexander Alexeyevich? Since the Transnistria Republic speaks 3 languages, or even more, I didn't find this answer to my question. This and your work as far as because we're talking about culture, not only just information space, the ethnic cultural dimension is stays outside the scope of your work. Do you do that consciously, or do you think that it's a minor factor that's not worth studying? Fortunately, the broadcast is not working.
Раз. Включите, пожалуйста, микрофон.
I'm sorry. Alexander Sage, thank you very much for your question. The Transnistria Republic has the following national idea. Transnistria regionalism is the Transnistria identity. This is an ethno-cultural dimension is leveled off by the regional component. There should be a harmonious symbiosis of three cultural communities, and I think because it's because there's such a that's this. Are you sure that this harmonious symbiosis I am a polylingual person. It's very hard for me sometimes not to switch to the Ukrainian language, and most people there are polylingual. When I read your work, you talk about the cultural information space as an autonomous sphere. Good arguments compared with other types of space. Can we say that this space, as any other space, as social space, for example, or media space, has an idea of this, of a quantum of analysis, a way we can, which we can use to analyze this space. Cultural information space is an amorphous phenomenon and or idea. So the unit of measurement is both a region both a region and individual can serve as this measurement unit. Whether because this depending on how dynamically or volatile, developing or volatile or static or harmonious this space would be, it can affect the state at large. So I would like to give the floor first to Konstantin Arsenievich Pantsarov, Spain University. Dear colleagues, well, in the current world, there's a tendency for for states to emerge that are not recognized. Their political status is not stable, it's not fixed, and Transnistria Republic is actually a good case for it. The dissertation is actually the first comprehensive study of information and cultural space of such a nation. And so there are new approaches in analyzing and providing solutions for challenges that the Transnistria Republic faces, and Transnistria Republic's media are analyzed. There's archives involved and other documents. The theoretical basis quite wide. Over 600 titles in the literature list, and good formulation of goals and objectives. They have been fulfilled. Structurally, the dissertation consists of an introduction, 4 chapters, and a conclusion. In the first chapter, as the state with postponed or deferred foreign political status, and the second chapter, the phenomenon of cultural information space, nature, essence, and categories, presents a systemic structural organization of cultural information station. Space, and the third chapter, cultural information space of Transnistria Republic, and the fourth chapter focuses on the prospects of the development of cultural information space of the Transnistria Republic, and talks about the problems of tolerant attitude to Transnistria Republic on the part of the foreign audiences. So, as any work of worthy work, this work is not devoid of some drawbacks. On page 8, the dissertation has the following formulation: hypothetical social formation. This is titled Information Society. Doesn't have a clear definition in the modern science, and journalist says, well, I would like to side with the author on this, but on the other hand, I wouldn't say that the information society is a hypothetical social formation. On page 22, when analyzing the empirical base of the research, or the author refers to the text of legislation of the Transnistria Republic as the text of the legal base. I think this is not entirely correct statement. And number 3, as far as the statement on page 75 that the media serve as the tools of maintaining national security and the protection of the society from the threats of information, including information technology. I think that media cannot fully protect society in the current era of information and psychological rivalry. And the fourth one, the formulation is that the title of section 3.4, the elite dimension of cultural information space, doesn't reflect its content because it has data that comes from questionnaires of the political elite, but also from the ordinary people. On page 242, quite a controversial statement is given, is that the internet is this tool of global broadcasting, and It presents a counterbalance of to the manipulations of public opinion, and which television is often accused of. I think internet, unfortunately, is the bed of a lot of fake news and other news and unchecked information. So on page 256, the author says that internet presents a threat of manipulative influence. So this is a contradiction of the author that the author allows in this in his work. In section 4.1, media and social media, problems of integration of Transnistria Republic and the tolerant attitude to it of the international publics. You should have given the definition of social media and classified them, and also the biblical should have been referred to as the list of sources and literature. Well, these critical remarks don't diminish the value of the dissertation, and therefore I would like to say that this research is of a systemic nature, well-rounded research. 50 articles that have been published in the journals of the High Attestation Commission of the Russian Federation testify to this fact that I totally endorse the application of Sergey Victorovich Oleynikov for a degree of Doctor of Political Sciences in the field of 10.01.10 journalism, and item 11 of this procedure has not been violated by the defendant. So the next review is by Alexander Alexeyevich Pronin, St. Petersburg University. Thank you very much, Igor Nikolaevich. Dear colleagues, I will be brief. I will not talk about the analysis that's relevance, regionality. I agree with all this and the characteristics in the work. I will only point out the most interesting provisions and the conclusions that the author arrives at, and some critical points. In chapter 1, I think that the most convincing conclusion is the conception of the unified this information space, that the information space has not been formed yet, and therefore it hampers the development of the Republic. And page 682, that's page 82, but in second chapter the main thing is that following Artamonova, the author says culture in the process of institutionalization is meant to keep the stability and the sustainability of society, as far while political institutions provide the rationalization or the optimization of society management and minimization of contradictions and the prevention of social crises and conflicts on the basis of knowledge and information. In chapter, I agree with this. In chapter 3, Oleynikov demonstrates the action of this matrix model in the case study of the Transnistria Republic, TSV, and the first Transnistria channel content are analyzed and juxtaposed. In terms of manipulation, speech influence, transformation of text, etc. So all the diagrams and the tables are very convincing, and this chapter is probably the most valuable of the whole work. So the conclusion then is from this analysis is that the two channels use diametrically opposite editorial strategies in covering the issues of internal life of the Transnistria Republic, and therefore it serves this rivalry. It serves as a catalyst of the societal split, and the growth of distrust in the government bodies of the Republic. In the fourth chapter, that talks about the future, that's forecasting, that is based on theoretical and methodological findings, give this doctoral dissertation a rounded and wholesome character. And I would like to say about social media. The data show that the traditional media lose out in comparison with online media, social media, in terms of objectivity, impartiality. As far as the expansion of Russian language and English sectors of social media, this is dynamically developing much faster than in the traditional media. So there's also a juxtaposition of elite and mass audience, and as far as the most important advantages of the work, theoretically thought out concept and its application to the real life case of the Transnistria Republic, and again with strong empirical basis, and so the media and communication processes are analyzed in a very comprehensive way. The author tries to steer in a very objective line vis-a-vis the Transnistria government and media landscape, and this has been said. Well, of course, there's room for academic discussion as far as the category of matrix as the object of research and as related to culture and communication is not a very substantiated. If we talk about a table with cells, then this is a more method, instrument of representing an object. If we talk about the initial origin of the phenomenon, the lack of recognition, then another type of category should be used. So, and also in terms of culture, the component culture, not information culture or political culture, but culture in its totality, in the traditional understanding, is not clear either. Well, all my remarks, critical remarks, are of a discussion nature. They don't mean to diminish the value of the dissertation, and I think that I believe that the dissertation complies fully with the requirements of doctoral thesis at St. Petersburg State University, and so the defender, Oleynikov Sergey Victorovich, deserves the conferral of the academic degree of Doctor of Political Sciences. And now I would like to hear Professor Kaminskaya from Novgorod University. I would not talk about the relevance and the originality of the research because we've heard it. Let's talk about the analysis of the. I think the narration is structured very logically from the general to the particular. Chapter 1 is on the international law and legal practice, and the second chapter, information space, as this as the unity of subjects and sources of information, channels of their dissemination by communicators. So, and then we have phenomenon of cultural information space. This phenomenon is treated by the dissertation author the unity of information of values, norms of traditions, and elements of cultural historical heritage, and the institutional dimension. Talking about the thematic, the content of the media, the author says that the information policy doesn't meet the the needs of the audience, reflected in the lower ratings of state media, of states with deferred political and external political status. And then this station, the author focuses on the television of Transnistria, which, as the author says,
помощью массовых социальных...
The dissertation of Transnistria Republic cannot compete with the television of the Transnistria Republic cannot compete with the television of the Russian Federation. As far as the the data of the sociological surveys and in-depth interviews of the elite lay foundation of the metrics of sustainability of cultural information space. It includes factors of trust in government, including social, in terms of social prosperity, intellectual level, etc. Also, the author discusses the prospects of cultural information space and the prospects are tied with the development of social media, because the number of subscribers have grown dramatically over the 12 years. Well, in terms of the case study of the comparison of two competing TV channels, TSV and First Transnistria channel, the author looks at them in terms of application of them applying different interpretations of reality. But the author views these strategies as a negative tendency, and I think, and because he thinks that the TV channels don't play a consolidating function. I think that social information process and the dissertation author views the social information process of the current world as specific to the states with deferred political status, whereas I believe that they're inherent in the global information space. In the context of socio-cultural situation, some futurological passages of the author remind of dreams rather than of a possible reality. For example, the decrease of the role of government in the formation of cultural information space. As a positive aspect of the work, I would like to note that the work has a lot of empirical material, content analysis of regional media, of the jurisdictions media, a survey of legislation and sociological studies and expert interviews. And this all gives me the right to endorse the dissertation and say that Oleynikov Sergey Victorovich is worthy of the degree of Doctor of Sciences in political sciences. Now I'd like to give the floor to Dr. Strovsky of Ariel University in Israel. I would like to say a few words about the work. I will not read out the interviews. Well, relevance and regionality and the degree of the the topic was studied. This is all of this at a very good level. But I would like to talk about some problem issues. First of all, I was very curious to read about them, and I would like to know the opinion of the author about them. Again, my questions will generate discussion, academic discussion, and especially at the defense of a doctoral dissertation. Well, I liked the presentation of the defendant, and this shows that the defendant is an established researcher. A lot of work has been done, and I understand that you become the first researcher to delineate to study the whole cultural and especially media space of the Republic. And it was an unknown, uncharted land. And why? Well, it was new to me. Well, nobody talks about, nobody writes about it, and therefore your research is an open page of this book, and I would like to hear your answers to my questions. I would like to point out three things. First one is which you note. The first one is the difference between the democratically oriented and authoritarian states. Well, authoritarian, maybe autocratic versus democratic, but it's not the matter. But if we talk about the period before the 1990s, we had a clear difference between the rule of law states and independent legal system, and where media are at the forefront, and there are authoritarian states which were not as good, and therefore the media were bad. But now, over the 30 years since that have passed since then, I start looking at this. I start getting confused. I understand what democracy is, but in these democratic states we have huge violations of, and I think maybe authoritarian states are not as bad. And I look at their media systems. I see Singapore as an authoritarian state, but the media there are developing better than in Brazil. But the state Israel, where do you put it in terms of political, moral, ethical, and media, and other limitations? Well, it talks about democracy, and but whenever it suits Israel government, everything, all these principles are violated. So acting on this, judging from this, maybe this juxtaposition is invalid. Well, for example, Ziver, Peters, and Schramm for theories of the press, the theory of the press, for theories of the. Well, there's been new research. Western life shows that not everything is so good, and this life also shows the complexity of the process. So I would like an extended answer from you, not just I don't think so or I do think so. Then the next thing that I would like to point out, at the background of this political situation, this issue of secession. You say that it's part of a lot of legal framework, but international life is much more complicated. Here, so unrecognized area, for example, the Transnistrian Republic of the Republic of Moldova. Does it have any prospects? Do you have any idea of it receiving a more established status? Well, you cannot live with this amorphous status. You have to do something about it. The problem of your work is in the fact that this aspect isn't studied. On the one hand, I have an image of a profound researcher, and on the other hand, who stands on the verge of the precipice and doesn't tell me what to do with this status. So what should the media do about it? Whether they should carry a responsibility for this status to be changed. If we talk about the diversity of the functional apparatus, but as an educational entity, the media should think about this as well. Are they thinking about it, or do they have anything to think with? So what I can find, if you tell me what the vector is, I can check it up and look them up, but to look for whom? And then the next thing, on page 88, I read, and the degree of crisis is determined by the ethical evaluation of information delivered by the media, by the audience. So, how do you measure this the level of criticism? What about if the audience becomes too critical? Oh, excuse me. If the level of an unethical level becomes too high, what happens then? Well, this process has future, but what future? You circumvented it. Well, I am not an expert, but you're an expert. Please, inform me. So, will the information space of the Republic join the European information space? To conclude that some minor deficiencies or lack of clarity on some issues cannot diminish the value of the dissertation, and therefore the dissertation complies with the level of doctoral research. That's good. That's it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dmitry Leonidovich. I would like to sort of give the bottom line, but I will not. I will also say about the relevance in political sciences, for example. This relevance needs two perspectives. First of all, the theoretical, and this, and then also cultural, methodological perspective. The cultural information space is treated as an institutional functional phenomenon, the specifics of which is determined by the lack of full status, international status vis-a-vis international law, and polyethnic integrated society. For the analysis of cultural information space, the author uses a matrix approach that allows him to identify a mass and elite models of structuring social political reality, and determine their convergence. And the author analyzes a lot of empirical data and compares online and traditional media as the components of media system. The text of the dissertation is structured in accordance with the logic of the algorithm from the general notions to the evolution of the cultural information space of the Republic in the projection in the future, from the past to the future. Then the author focuses in one separate chapter on the phenomena of cultural information space, which he analyzes with using a systemic structural methodology in institutional and functional perspectives, and he uses some attributes of sovereignty as the spheres and fields. It's very important, and the concluding part of the work is dedicated to the prospects of the Transnistria Republic as a state, and especially focusing on its information policy that is directed at international integration and at the same time sovereign positioning. The author identifies a negative process of influence. And that are related to the crisis consciousness, and that consciousness in the elites and in the ordinary public, and the controversial definitions and the drawbacks of dissertation have a character of further deliberation, need for further deliberation and clarification and further study. Terminological issues consist in the necessity to define conceptual nuances of the notions of cultural information space, and media space. The author uses institutional functional approach, but he also tries to integrate into it the relationship between the social, cultural and political spaces. And at the same time, he also includes in his discussion, in his matrix of the sustainability, ideological, ideator, socio-cultural, psychological, material and demographic factors that are adapted under the influence of the media and other public and state institutions. So it's a complex picture, and very difficult to keep in balance. And also, the author says that the ideological consensus in inter-ethnic relations is based on the rudiments of Soviet mentality, which keeps the international nature of inter-ethnic relations intact, that they survive from the Soviet Union. It's the interpretation of the condition of the state is conducted from the position of international law, but the drawback here is a universal approach to the problem, and maybe this approach ignores some concrete historical conditions, and therefore maybe this approach should be augmented in this way. For example, you can see different states. For example, the republics of Donbass and Luhansk, they are different from the Transnistria Republic because they are based on industrial foundations, whereas, for example, Kosovo and Northern Cyprus is more agrarian state, and therefore ethnocentrism there in both groups of unrecognized states, ethnocentrism is the key unifying factor. So on page 18, I cannot see enough attention to the evolutionary factor, the evolution of the state when we talk about media, the media system, information space. But all of this doesn't diminish the quality of the paper, of the thesis, and the dissertation has all the fields that are necessary for the for this kind of research and interdisciplinary research, and so the dissertation complies fully with the requirements of the dissertation. So Sergey Victorovich Oleynikov deserve being granted a degree of Doctor of Political Sciences in the degree field 100110 Journalism. And now I would like to ask Sergey Victorovich to give your comments and answers to the Konstantin Arsenyevich. Thank you very much. I fully agree that this is an information society. But these criteria with the real information society, especially in countries that I deal with, that are of hypothetical nature, and this of media here, in terms the role of media in terms of maintenance of security, information there is broadcast. That has been broadcast in the Transnistria republics. It was not all about information, informing the public, but more of a consolidating function. Well, of course, now we are part of a global information society, so it's less evident, but nevertheless, this function is retained. And as far as the relationship between Konstantin, concerning your structural comments, we have a lot of changes, renamings, and very dynamic changes in the media landscape, and well, of course, social media develop very fast, and of course, as you correctly point out, the internet is an alternative source of information, and even opposition of the traditional media, giving a boost to the development of the traditional media. And also they provide a public forum, and I'd like to thank you for focusing on these issues, and I would like to affirm my intention to incorporate these issues in my further research, and especially in the role of media and the state sector. Well, The matrix approach is used in most cases as an instrumental approach. In our case, we decided to go beyond that. We took the matrix of a subject as a subject of research. Well, it's an instrument, but it also is a reflection of the information space. Well, as far as the need to meet the requirements of the political science field testifies to the prompted me to use a lot of philosophical considerations and research. An alternative, as you probably know, that in the current age, well, very often oppositional media don't present their points of view to add to their voice to the democratic exchange, but serve their own purposes, and these alternative sources will actually were the mouthpieces of the owners, and the society looked at this ostentatious competition with restraint, and actually resisted it because they saw the ulterior factors. And we have the Transnistria Republic has a society that is devoid of xenophobia and of inter-ethnic strife, because it's a polycultural, polyethnic entity. I believe that all your comments will help me to formulate in better terms the need to transfer of from the model of national sovereignty to the model of integration into the European and global political space or information space in terms of the media of the Republic. The first question by Professor Strosky has to do with the logic that between the good media and the bad media in democratic states and bad media in the authoritarian states. And of course, this model that I use has been used because this follows the logic of the former Soviet Union, but we see that the complexity is much higher, and also therefore we need to change the rigid reference frame. In terms of the second question, the postpones in terms of the media, there can be an autonomous reference frame for the media for states with postponed status. because in most of these states, most of the states, what develops is the paternalistic system of media. Well, and it's unfortunately unavoidable. And unfortunately, the cases of Moldova and Ukraine prove that as well. So but of course, we, as I said, we shouldn't overestimate the objectivity and impartiality even of mainstream respectable media. If you take the example of the USA, where partisan politics entered the media stage, in terms of the status, well, the image of a small country where in which 3 languages are spoken, where Ukrainian, Russian, and Moldavian speakers live side by side peacefully. I think this is the image that should be projected outside, and the task to do that should be the responsibility of not only media or the government, but all social and public institutions. We cannot generate this image with propaganda. We should do it through an open discussion, and over the last 30 years, unfortunately, at the same time, this issue has to be dealt with because over the 30 years, image making has been directed internally rather than externally, and of course, we look at this problem in the dissertation. So the way to go is to follow the tendency of the world to multipolar context, and so as far as you're concerned with futurological character of my last chapter, but I think this is the only way, and these dreams are the only way to look into the future and build the future. And I also agree with again, following from these comments, I would like to answer other questions about the brand of the brand of Transnistria Republic. I think that Russian media outlets should have affiliations, and international media outlets should have affiliation or represent offices in the Transnistria Republic, and maybe create an investment climate that would encourage Russian oligarchs to invest in the media in the Republic. I agree with the comments about the terminology, the lack of clarity of terminology. As far as the sustainability of the cultural and information, the issue of the sustainability of the information space should be flexibly discussed, of course. I totally agree with you. And it should and well, the political elite unfortunately doesn't view our audience views their audience with arrogance and I commented previously, this is the media policy and media landscape is formed by the political regime and monopolized nature of the economy. The historically integrated community of the Soviet Union and the remnant of it, that we see in the Transnistria Republic, is actually is deemed as a threatening factor to in the eyes of the foreign audiences. I would like to now address the members of the audience. Do you have any comments? Galina Melnik, St. Petersburg University. Galina Sergeyevna, 5 minutes. Dear colleagues, I would like to talk about the originality and the novelty of the work. The relevance is that the Republic has a chance that it can use to prove its resilience and to give a good example to the countries that enjoy the same status. And this is a unique role of the Transnistria Republic. We are very little informed about what's happening there. We now see the view of a scientist, of a scholar, from within and from the outside at the same time. This is this research can be a huge impetus for the international community to look at this area with more interest and maybe learn from the from the experience in terms of ethnic composition and ethnic peace. Well, and of course. We are not idealists. That status cannot be changed by us, political status. And of course, we understand that the media will not do that, but certainly political, rather the political decision making changes statuses. But I hope that Sergey Victorovich will show combative attitudes working in Transnistria State University and promote his views and have them focused. And Sergey is a medium as well, because he opens universities university doors in Pridnestrovie, in Transnistria Republic for researchers in Russia, and also our Chinese students, for example, publish their papers in their journals. So this is great work as a mediator, and I totally endorse the dissertation. I think the goals have been achieved, and I hope that this will become a good monograph. Thank you very much, Galina Sergeyevna. Please register, Galina Sergeyevna. Dear colleagues, do we have any more comments? No more comments? I would like to give the floor to the academic advisor of the dissertation, author Dmitry Petrovich Gavra, Professor Gavra. I would like to say a few words. I would like to talk about the essence of the discussion, and many questions were asked, very interesting questions, but unfortunately I am not in the capacity here to join the discussion, so I'll follow the procedure. Sergey Victorovich Oleynikov is an example of a goal-oriented, talented specialist that has that combines teaching and research. In '95, he graduated from Shevchenko University of Transnistria, and this. When the war started, you were a student. Took place when you were a student. So, 2007, it has worked, and now since 2013, he has been working as the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Transnistria Republic, Transnistria University, and we have been working together for many years. Very interesting experience for me. A lot of experience. So he works as the associate professor of the university, supervises dissertations, does research in content analysis, and teaches journalism and discourse analysis. So this is our colleague. Over the last 4 years, he's overseen the project Total Dictation in Transnistria Republic. He is a very active person. Has been awarded by a prize in science for scientific achievement of the Republic, and many other merits. As personally, this is a very mature, great person, professionally and personally. This is a worthy person. I would like you to endorse the application. And now I would like to take a break for discussion to arrive at the joint decision on the verdict. And please switch off the broadcast. Thank you very much. Our session continues. I would like the broadcast to be switched on again. Make sure that it works. So I put the question of conferring the degree for voting. I remind you that 2/3, that more than half, but not fewer than 3 members of the Dissertation Council should vote for it. So, Pansarev, in favor. Alexander Polarinov in favor. Tatiana Kaminskaya in favor. Pridnestrovie, Dmitry in favor, and I'm chairman of the also in favor. I vote in favor. Well, this means that, dear colleagues and guests, that I declare that out of the 5 members present, all 5 members voted in favor, no nays, no abstentions. The decision to confer the degree of Doctor of Sciences in Political Sciences, in journalism, the degree field of journalism is taken. 2 minutes. Dear Chairman, dear members of the dissertations, dear everybody present, all present, and Dmitry Petrovich, would like to thank the University of St. Petersburg. I have 2 home universities, St. Petersburg University and Shevchenko University of Transnistria Republic. Both these universities have been a very comfortable home for research and teaching, and starting with the dean and researchers and secretary of any department, I always felt home, and that gave me confidence, and hence the results. Dmitry Petrovich believed in me, and 16 years ago, and I hope we will continue our cooperation in the future. And if something was wrong, forgive me. On behalf of myself and the members of the Dissertation Council, congratulate you on the degree of the Doctor of Political Sciences, St. Petersburg University. Congratulations to Dmitry Petrovich Gavra and the department that Professor Gavra chairs.